and civil society. Today, we have experts from across the field who will be sharing their thoughts, knowledge, and opinions with the rest of us. And our colleague Ahmed Rafiq will chair the conference. He is the head of PhD program in Islamic Studies, School of Graduate Studies of the Sunan Kalijaga State Islamic University, Yogyakarta. And now, without further delay, let me give the floor to the chairman of today's conference, Dr. Ahmed Rafiq.
Thank you so much, Dr. Alper Al-Assad. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Respected participants, especially all the speakers. As Dr. Al-Assad already said, that today we will have a bit long conference, half-day conference. We will have 4 sessions. For each session, we will have 2 speakers. And we will start with 2 speakers. Let me make sure that for the first sessions, we will have around 20 minutes for first Kamel Asabani. Yes, Kamel Asabani. Please correct me about misspell your names. He is PhD candidate at the Power University Nijmegen. And second, we will have Dr. Atik Tapipin, sorry. He is a former head of the organizations of teachers of Islamic education at senior high school in the province of West Java. And now he's a coordinator of foreign collaborations in the associations of teachers of Islamic education subject from 2002, 2001, and 2024. So without due further, let me invite Kamel Asabani to give the presentations. Both of them will talk about the 2 problematic cases in classes. They might possibly present the video or the presentations. Time is yours. We start from Kamel, please. Are you already here? Excuse me. Hello. Kamal is already here.
Kemal, you are mute. If you unmute yourself.
Okay. Yeah. For the first session, we have 20 minutes. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, please.
Good morning.
Okay.
Good morning. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much for the invitation. You can hear me well?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Good.
Yes.
Let me share my screen.
Yes. Please.
Okay. Thank you very much. You can see the presentation. Yes. Don't on, but you can. I will give a very short presentation about a problematic case and a few months ago in the journal. So my page called integrated pedagogical didactic.
I got a problem to hear, Kamal. Is it only my problem or for everybody?
Yeah, everybody.
Okay.
Yes.
Should we wait for it? But he's still here, right? Okay.
Sorry, I got again. You can hear.
Yeah, sorry, we cannot hear you clearly.
Oh.
Okay.
Kamal, you're still on mute. It's still in mute. Yeah, sorry.
Or you try to do it without the video. It might possibly can helpful for you.
Hello?
Hello. Maybe Mas Rifa,
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Yes,
Yes, we can
All
hear you.
right.
he can hear you.
Okay, sorry, my connection is not good, I think. Okay, let me share my screen again.
Mhm.
Is it good now?
Yeah, better.
Okay, I'm asked to give a very short presentation about.
Please.
You can hear me?
Okay. Okay. While we are waiting for Kamal to fix the problem with his connections, we will finish all the presentations, the 4 sessions of representation, and then at the end we will leave around 30 minutes for questions. So for the question, all the participants, you can write the questions on the chat rooms, and then there will be the committee who will collect the questions, and then I will read the questions and subject it to any speakers that you'd like to answer your questions. So please, during the program, during the session, during the presentation, you can write any question anytime. Kamal?
Does it work now?
Okay, please.
Hello? You can hear me now and see me?
Yeah, we can hear you, but still it's not too clear.
Okay, yeah, I don't know what the problem is. I keep getting out, being kicked out of Zoom for some reason. But let me get to the point.
Yes,
I'm going
please.
to give a short, presentation on based on an article that I wrote on a problematic case. It's based on this article that you can see it on the screen now. So Islamic religious education towards an integrative pedagogical model. And the essence of the article is that I basically say that there's a dominant discourse that says that there's a clash of civilizations, especially between the Islamic and the Western civilization. And my approach is to give another approach, you could say, another view of our world. So there's no clash of civilizations. Actually, there's just a clash of fundamentalisms. Both, for example, Islamic fundamentalism, but you also have Christian or secular fundamentalism in the world. And the clashes that we often see are often about these two extremes on both sides. So my approach is to, when you teach about Islam or teaching Islamic religious education, to start from especially in the Western context, from a Western Muslim identity of the students, because they are both Muslim and Western and have other identities. So to start from a multiple identity approach, to recognize that they have both identities in them. Well, some people speak of a clash. They don't experience this. Maybe they do it in the outer world, but at the same time they embody this hybrid identity. And other aspects is that I start with the child-led pedagogy and pedagogy of a critical middle ground, starting from the societal context with the focus on justice. So I do recognize that there are clashes in society, clashes of these fundamentalisms, and I start from the societal context to identify where are these clashes and where can we find the middle ground between extremes. And it will be clearer in a moment how this could look like. So I give an alternative of teaching Islam only by teaching about the 5 pillars of Islam, or only about other aspects of the Islamic tradition.
Harapan dari kementerian hasilnya yang
Switch the mic on, but okay, that's all. So I give an alternative to just teaching about Islam without looking at the societal context. Often Islam is taught in a way like this, like you can start with the 5 pillars for Islam example. What I suggest is that we start from the 5 pillars of society. So if we look at society, there are different domains. There's the political domain, there's the economical domain, there's science, then there's cultural diversity, and there are certain culturalism, like for example, especially in the West, there's this idea that we are a Jewish Christian society. So I start from these domains, and then I identify like what are the extremes in these domains in society. For example, there's the idea that radical secularism, for example, is an idea that's present in our society, which says that basically religion is something you have to keep behind closed doors. It's a private matter. Economically, there's this idea of neoliberalism, that we can reduce human beings to consumers. Then there's scientism, that basically says that science is the only way to look at reality, and there's no metaphysical or spiritual world, and that religion is outdated, for example. Then there's another extreme, and when you look at diversity, for example, cultural relativism, that's the idea that really it doesn't really matter, all cultures are equal, and there's no need really to engage in critical dialogue with each other. And culturalism that can be a source of racism and Islamophobia. The idea that Europe is Jewish Christian and it's a superior culture and other cultures are backward. So you can see that what happened is often in society that some Muslims have certain answers or responses on these dominant aspects of society. For example, you can see it on the lowest points, for example, against radical secularism, you have the alternative that we have to create an Islamic State. And with Islamic State, they often have a really radical idea of how this would look like. Islamic finance can be an alternative on idea of neoliberalism, but it can also be segregative. There are different forms, of course, of Islamic finance. There are more open ideas about Islamic finance in the form of an alternative ethical banking, for example. But it can also lead to just being superficial Islamic finance. So only look at certain details, but at the same time just accepting the neoliberalist frame. I'm going very fast on it because I don't have much time, but an alternative on scientism is literalism in approaching religious texts, for example, creationism. So rejecting evolution theory, for example, and sticking to a very literalistic interpretation of the scriptures. Then there's cultural or relativism, and reaction can be segregation. That's, for example, please switch your microphone, mic off. I can hear. Then there's the idea of segregation can be an extreme reaction on cultural relativism. So that Muslims should just stick together, don't mingle, don't mix, don't mingle with other parts of society. Then there's Islamophobia, And there can be a reaction of being basically racism the other way around, so very anti-Western, for example. So these are, you can see both are extremes. And my idea is that, sorry. My idea is that you can, you have to identify these extremes so you can give an alternative inspired by the Islamic tradition. So in that way, you take the society as something that is real, and also that the children can connect with, because these are elements, maybe they look now very abstract in these terms, but they experience them in their daily lives. So I'm going now to show a short video clip. It's spoken in Dutch, but I will give a short translation. I hope you can still follow it based on, if you don't speak Dutch, based on the nonverbal communication. But I will also stop sometimes and give it a short translation. So I think I have to now stop share. I'm not sure if you can see. If you can see the video screen now, or do I have to stop share screen and share another time?
Okay, sorry, the technician can help it. How can we do it to see?
I think I have to stop share maybe first, and then share again. I think I will try that.
Okay.
Yes, it works.
Yes, please.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Can you hear the sound? Can you hear sound? No.
No.
No. I have to share again, and I've got to share sound also. Yes, I can do that now. Yeah. Yes.
En spaar het klimaat. Zet ook de knop
You can
om.
hear sound, right?
Yeah.
You can hear sound.
Yes, we can hear.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, these are advertisements. First, I have to show these, and then I. All right. Let me see.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, what I will show is a short clip of something that can happen in offices, but can also happen in schools. What you see is a woman of color, probably with a Muslim background, but yeah, and the office is very white, so the context is very white, secular also. And then she got, they're going to ask, someone is going to ask her some questions.
Ja. Was leuk? Met de hele familie, hè? Vieren dat de Ramadan voorbij is. En met je zoon Najib. Ali. Met Ali, ja. Lijkt me zwaar hoor, maand vasten. Poeh, petje af.
Oh ja, hoezo?
Nou, gewoon, lijkt me heel zwaar. Ik bedoel, ik probeer ook wel eens een dieet, low carbs, weet je wel.
Oh ja. En?
Nee, lukt me niet. Ik kan niet volhouden, lijkt me heel zwaar. Is het zwaar?
Geen idee, ik doe geen Ramadan.
Hè? Hoe kan dat?
So very short, she asked her, how was your Ramadan? It looks very heavy to me, not eating all day. And then the woman, the cleanster, she says, I don't know, I don't do Ramadan.
Nou. Ik bedoel, jij bent toch... Je bent toch een... Ik bedoel, je bent een... Jij, bedoel, ik heb altijd... Nee, maar ik bedoel, ik heb gewoon... Dat is toch zo? Je bent een... toch? Wat bedoel je? Dat ben jij toch? Jij bent een... Dat, of niet? Je bent toch... Je bent toch...
Ja,
Ja. Nou, dan doe je toch Ramadan?
ik niet.
Mag dat wel? Nee, dat mag niet. Mag het? Van de imam? Van de familie? Wat vindt je familie ervan? En je man?
Ik ga toch niet een maand vasten? Voor wie? Voor wat?
Oh, je gelooft niet.
Wat weet jij ervan?
Geloof je wel?
Gaat je niks aan. Ik doe gewoon waar ik zin in heb, ja?
Jongens, we hebben hier te maken met een hele moderne, zelfbewuste vrouw. Bravo!
Helemaal niet.
Jawel, dat ben je wel.
Nee hoor.
Wel.
Oké, dan ben ik dat wel. Mag ik nu weer door?
Natuurlijk mag jij door. Sterke vrouwen mogen altijd door, hè? Inshallah, Fatma. Inshallah. Geweldig mens, Fatma. Echt waar. Ze is Hollandser dan jij en ik bij elkaar, Henny.
So I will give a short explanation. Sorry, I have a cold, as you can hear. But yeah, the woman was asked, yeah, did you fast? So she was very. It was very hard for her first to say, are you Muslim or not? So it was very hard. You could see to ask her this question, and then she was very surprised that she didn't fast. And then she asked her, is it allowed? Are you allowed to do that from the imam? And then she said, well, I decide for myself. So, and then she got an applause for making their own decisions. So you can see some deep prejudices about Muslims. That they all alike, maybe they all practice, and they practice because the imam says so. And basically, the idea is that if you are like us, so when she heard she was not fasting and it was her own decision, then she basically got an applause. So I will go to some basic questions with you, and then so what kind of prejudice did you see passing by? Why is this problematic? Which of the 5 pillars of society do you think this relates to? And how can we anticipate this in education? So I'm not going to give answers, but I was asked to just show this clip and then just some questions and give the audience some room to answer. I think this was what we're going. Do we have time for this, or should we just? Otherwise, I will just say something about this question and then just finish. Yeah. What we can see in this idea is the idea that all Muslims are alike, that Islam is one monolithic entity, that we are all the same, and that they are, and also that Muslims don't have a free will of their own. Another idea is that yeah, that when Muslims are fasting, they're not yeah, she in this movie you can see basically that she was very happy to see that she didn't fast because it looked like she was emancipated. And the idea is that if you are practicing Muslims, then you are not emancipated. So there and these things I think have to do with the very secular biases that there are in society, but also yeah, I think you can say Islamophobic prejudices by really essentializing Islam, saying that there's a certain essence and that they all have to abide with it. And we cannot understand that someone can be Muslim and decide for themselves how they practice and even if they practice or not. And this is also a very personal decision. So yeah, the question is, how can we anticipate this in education? I think I think in education you have to speak about these structures that in society, because the students, whether they are Muslim or not, they will be confronted with these things in society, these prejudices on Islam, and they have to be aware of these structures of secularism, of culturalism, Islamophobia, etc. That's and others that play a big role in these discussions, and how religion and Islam especially is perceived in society. I thank you very much for listening, and I hope this gave you some inspiration. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kamal. That's very interesting. So that's the issue of prejudice. We can find it also in Indonesia. So even though it might possibly in a different way, but there is a prejudice. Now let's go to the Dr. Atik Tapipin. When this is the same issue, of course, we already did run out of time for these sessions actually. So please, you can do it a bit shorter, then we'll move to the next sessions. Okay, please, Dr. Atik Tapipin. Thanks, yours.
Okay, thank you, Pak Rafiq. Assalamualaikum, everyone. I really happy to be here today. Let's just start my presentation. Pak Rifai, bisa saya minta ditayangkan? I will start my presentation by a short movie under 2 minutes, I think. Mas Rifai.
Confronted with ever-spreading radicalism. By Dr. Atik Tapipin, the Association of Religious Education Teacher of Indonesia, AGPAII, and Stitnanggalata, Bandung, Indonesia. In recent years, the rise of radicalism has become a major challenge for schools around the world. This case study examines how one school in a war-torn province dealt with the issue. Teachers worldwide facing the challenge of radicalism. Radicalization can occur among students from any background and culture. Some teachers lack the training to recognize or address radical behavior. Teachers often face pressure from both students and parents to avoid discussing sensitive topics. The school in question had a diverse student body, with students from different ethnic and religious backgrounds. Additionally, the province was experiencing an ongoing conflict, which exacerbated tensions within the school. Teachers were initially unprepared to deal with radicalism. When the school began to see signs of radicalism among some of its students, the teachers were unsure of how to respond. They had not received training on how to recognize or address radical behavior. Addressing radicalism, that would be training sessions organized in the school administration. The school administration recognized the need for training and organized sessions on recognizing and addressing radicalism. Teachers learned how to identify and address radical behavior, as well as how to provide support to at-risk students. The training also emphasized the importance of promoting tolerance and understanding among students.
Oke, lanjut Pak Rifai ke PPT-nya. Okay, the management of NICMCR, especially the Costly, Tolerance, and IRE working group, the honorable speakers, and also all the participants. Thank you for taking the time to attend this online international seminar. As we saw in the video before, the world of school education is facing quite serious challenges, namely religious-based intolerant and anti-democratic concept and attitudes that can disturb the peace and tranquility of the country. I will try to present the extreme violent presentation program that we, the Indonesian Islamic Religious Education Teachers Association, have carried out since 2007. All right. We can have a look here. Our mapping of preventing violent extremism, it's containing two different important work. Number one is intervention, and the second one is strengthening. The intervention one, it's going to school and class alum cultures. It's something we intervention about the transnational ideology who coming here to Indonesia, especially from East Asia, and then the exclusive recitation, and then the last one is radical. Ya, itu nomor 2, Pak. Thank you. Terima kasih. And then yang kedua, Bu, Pak. Ya, itu. Makasih. Terima kasih. Okay. The intervention we carried out to influence school culture and class culture in warding of bad influences, organizing from the emergency of transnational ideology, exclusive recitation, and traditional extremism. Berikutnya Pak Rifai. Sorry. Okay. This is the approach we take an effort to prevent extreme violence. Okay, next one. Berikutnya Pak Rifai. Okay, dear seminar participant, the strategies from program for the prevention of violent extremism is designed through 3 channels. Number one, the first one, through the principal. We hope that he or she will provide many ways to create a school culture that supports the prevention of extremism violence. And secondly, this is the strongest we can do, namely through teachers in the classroom, especially religious teachers. And thirdly, through students, by creating student corner to cultivate a love of peace. Berikutnya Pak Rifai. Okay. Before I continue, I'd like to explore some words that are quite strange to some people. This section we receive in-depth study, I think, from Honorable Professor Amin Abdullah. ROHIS is one of the extracurricular program at school. Students who have an interest in deepening religion can join this program. Then those who carry violence in the name of religion usually start by giving the wrong meaning to the following concept: Taghut, Khilafah, and Jihad. The accusation by several parties that Indonesia is a secular country, especially Taghut, is not true, as we know. right? Because although it is not a religious state, Togut is not a religious state, Indonesia gives freedom to all community to carry out their religious teaching responsible. And number one, the khilafah is usually interpreted with power of government. So the word khilafah, Islami, refers to the Islamic government in the past era. The Indonesian Ulama Council, or MUI, is of the opinion that the implementation of the Khalifah system is not a must. So it doesn't become an obligation. Jihad has a broad meaning, namely being serious and working hard to the good. According to scholars, jihad can be manifested with the heart, spreading Islamic law, dialogue, and discussion in the context of seeking of truth, presenting works for the benefits of Muslim by fighting infidelity. Berikutnya Pak. Okay, you can have a look here. You can see. So this the following this here are programs that we have carried out in an effort to prevent violent extremism. One of the programs that attracts the attention of students is to present former terrorists who have rediscovered the peaceful path of religious truth. Next, Pak. Okay.
Okay. Can you make it shorter, Patrick?
Sorry?
Can you make it shorter and we can move to the
All
next?
right. Okay. One of the biggest emergencies radicals, only two more, Pak Rofi, sorry. Radicalism in school is the reappearance of Rohis alumni who have not found a peaceful way to spread religion. That's why the recruitment of Rohis coaches is very important to pay attention. Berikutnya Pak Rifai. Okay, this slide, we have not found the best alternative in interviewing in school program financing for violent prevention. Okay, the last one, Pak Rifai, terakhir. Okay, AGPAII has started a violent prevention program in schools in 2008. In recent years, AGPAII has succeeded in producing several important products in effort to prevent violence in school, as you can see in the pictures. Okay, that's for me, Pak Ropik. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much, Pak Atik. So yeah, from the first sessions, sorry, we ran out for the first sessions. Actually, even we take around 15 minutes for the second sessions. Before we move to the second sessions, and we will have we will have Dr. Mika Yetan. Sorry if I mispronounce your names, and I suppose Ina will present it for Dr. Mika and Bunyai Hindun Anissa. So from the first session, we can see that's the problem of not only the students, but also the teacher to anticipate the issues. So now, please, I will come. I will give the time to Ina to present the presentation of the Dr. Mika Yetan with the issue on the communication strategies, guidelines, how to guard children against violent extremisms. So Dr. Mika Yetan from Radboud University, and Ina will present it. Time is yours, please.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for this invitation. Should I show my own presentation, or is my presentation shown by you?
Okay. I'm suppose you, okay, the definition, you can show it by yourself, I suppose.
In by Mas Raffi, Mas Rifai.
Mas Rifai, yes.
Mas,
Please.
Can he show the presentation?
presentation in teratas bahasa Inggris, Mas.
Yeah, the one
ditayangkan.
in Dutch that's before send it to me.
No, the one in English.
Yes,
I sent.
I know it.
Okay.
Okay, please.
Okay, thank you very much. On behalf of Meike Jetten, I present the results of, and in particular the recommendations based on her empirical study. Meike Jetten's interest is on Christian and Muslims meeting each other, and she wonders why these meetings often take place just in a friendly atmosphere. Everybody is so much willing to live in peace and to understand each other's religious inspiration, and in particular to know more about daily rituals. And some people arrive at the conclusion that they do not differ so much in their daily practicalities. And others express their dissatisfaction that neighbors not even greet them when they walk by their house. But as some Muslims state, we feel embarrassed and dare not invite them for tea or ask them to bring their children to play with our children at our home. Muslims and Christians both know that if they do not meet each other, how then might ever people get to know and to understand each other? The practical troubles and the complexity to disrupt the status quo was the reason for Meike Jetten to research meetings with Christian and Muslim participants. In short, Jetten's research is about dialogue. Next slide, please. In this presentation, I'll inform you about daily practices of interreligious education and interreligious encounters in the Netherlands, the theoretical framework of hermeneutic communicative teaching and learning, and the research question and design. But the focus of my presentation is on Jetten's recommendations about inter- and intra-religious communication between people, students who are socialized in different ways in their religious tradition, Christianity and Islam. Next slide, please. Interreligious encounters, informal in neighborhoods and formal in religious education classes, can contribute to a better understanding, to a kind of tolerance of the other. However, we do not know what and how these encounters exactly contribute to a more inclusive society. By consequence, we do not know how to improve those meetings. From earlier research, we know that non-Muslim students in general are curious about, for example, the headscarf, about Ramadan, and that Muslim students in general wish to know more about Jesus' resurrection. But in what way are e-classes, focusing on transfer of this kind of required knowledge, in what way they contribute to an inclusive society, we do not know. And that's why Meike Jetten started her research, aiming at a better understanding of people adhering to different religious traditions, as such contributing to a peaceful living together. Jetten's research is situated in the hermeneutic communicative tradition. Jetten's research question focuses on the communicative dimension of interreligious encounters, since in general in interreligious meetings, core concepts, core rituals and core practices are central in the discussions that, however, sometimes lack a dialogical point of view and more often look like monologues. Next slide, please. Jetten's theoretical framework is hermeneutic communicative teaching and learning. Hermeneutic refers to understanding the meaning others connect with religious phenomena. Communicative in Jetten's research refers to the way people talk about their own religious tradition and the religious tradition of the other, what they say about religions, and interpretation of the meaning thereof, how to understand the meaning of religion in daily life. Communication, according to Jetten, can be distinguished in 4 different styles. The interaction can focus on facts, like Jesus was a prophet, his life, death, and resurrection are central in the Christian tradition. and in biblical narratives told and written down by followers of Jesus, Jesus is presented as the Son of God. Or it can focus on the fact that Muhammad is the prophet of the one and unique God who received the surahs and the Quran directly from God. That's a fact. The interaction can be a clarification, like for me, it's important to go to church every Sunday because in church I feel the presence of God. Or for me, it's important to pray 5 times a day. This is a personal interpretation and concretization in daily life of core values of the religious tradition. Or the interaction may be an open question, like, please tell me what's the reason that you refuse to take off your headscarf in a job interview? Or what's exactly the reason that you go to church on Sunday twice a day? And last but not least, the interaction can be a reflection. Because, for example, thinking about the way my parents raised me, I'm grateful that they never forced me to go to church. Or the way my parents practiced their religion in everyday life fills me with awe and gratitude. And then in addition to communication styles, Jetten distinguishes 4 dimensions of communication, dimensions of interpretation. The semiotic dimension, between sign and meaning, the institutional dimension, general accepted and individual meaning, and the linguistic dimension, literal and metaphorical meaning. Metaphorical meaning opening a space of imagination, dreams of a world as God has created that world. Next slide, please. In her research, Jetten's aim was first to describe interreligious meetings in line with the method that she developed for interreligious communication. She wondered whether and how the structured meetings contribute to the competence of the participants to communicate more successful with the other. 260 participants, mixed groups, Muslims and Christians, attended the structured interreligious encounters, and 160 persons, also mixed groups, participated in interreligious meetings following a common practice. Next slide, please. Important for teacher training is the conclusion of Jetten. She says, to make interreligious encounters more successful, it's important to teach and to inform participants at the start of these encounters about communication styles and communication dimensions. That results in participants being aware of their own and the other different ways of interaction, whether they tell about facts, whether they give a clarification, whether they ask open questions or not, and maybe it's a reflection they present. Also, the participant then can distinguish in their own expression and in the other expression the semiotic, institutional, and linguistic dimension. Important conclusion is that being aware of these distinctions, it enables participants, students, and learners to respond on the same level, a precondition for successful religious and interreligious communication. Next slide, please. In addition to that, it's important for the leader of the group, the teacher in RE classes, to know about the cultural and religious background of the students, to identify and to name important differences and commonalities. Also, the teacher should be aware of the power aspect in the interactions between students in class. Knowledge and awareness of these aspects refers to what students bring into the classroom from their life outside the classroom. Aspects that can have a positive, but also a negative influence on the dialogue in class. And last but not least, a safe space in class is of utmost importance for a constructive interreligious dialogue. Safe in the sense that each and every student starts the dialogue with an open mind, is willing to express her or his religious position, and is listened to and responded in a respectful way. As such, RE classes can contribute to a peaceful and respectful society of nice and respectful citizens. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ina, okay, for the presentation. And yeah, let's move on to Bunyai Indun Anissa. She is now a special staff of Minister of Manpower of Republic of Indonesia. She is also the secretary of Rabitah Ma'ahid Islami. That's the kinds of the organizations of Islamic boarding school under the National Board of Nahdlatul Ulama. And she is currently managing the pesantren, a traditional Islamic boarding school, Hasim Ash'ari at AGPAII. So the time is yours, please. And we actually have limited time, but yeah, you can do it at the time that we have. Please, Bunyai Hindun. For those of you who have any question, please write the questions on the chat room, and then we will collect it and read it at the end of the last sessions, please.
Thank you, Mas Rafiq. Goedemorgen, goedemiddag, everybody. I would like to start my presentations about how to engage santri in preventing radicalization and violent extremism. So santri are the students of pesantren. So the young people who study in pesantren are called santri. So I would like to start from the definition of the pesantren. Pesantren or pondok pesantren. So sometimes you call pesantren or pondok pesantren is the same. Refers to private Islamic boarding schools in Indonesia. And most pesantrens are affiliated with Nahdlatul Ulama organization. We know that NU is the biggest Islamic organization in Indonesia, which promotes peace and moderate Islam. And currently, there are 30,494 pesantrens spread around the country. The term of pesantren derives from the root word santri or students and pesantrian or the place of the santri. Pesantrens also play as social institutions, in the beginning, pesantrens only teach religious studies, but starting in the second half of the 20th century, some pesantrens started adding secular subjects to their curriculum as a way of negotiating modernity. And now we move to, oh sorry, can I share my presentation please, Mas siapa ya yang share? Sorry. Yes. Okay, the third slide. Slide yang ketiga, Mas. Yes. The basic principles of pesantren, as mentioned in the pesantren law. Since 2019, we have pesantren law, and there are basic principles of pesantren. The first is belief in the one and only God, and the second basic principles is very, very important to against extremism, that is nationalism. So how the pesantren can develop nationalism in the santri. And the third basic principle is independence. So to run the daily activities, pesantren self-management and not depend on other side. And the fourth principle is empowerment, and the fifth principle is beneficial. Means that not beneficial means beneficial means kemaslahatan maybe in Indonesia. And then the sixth principle is multicultural. So in the pesantren, we are welcomed from for the santri from different backgrounds. I mean, different backgrounds mean different culture, different race, and also different language, etc. And then the 7th basic principle is professionalism, and the 8th principle is accountable, and 9th principle is sustainable, and the 10th principle is legal certainty. And pesantren, please next slide. Pesantren consists of at least 5. Yeah, 5. The first is a kiai or nyai or tuan guru or guruta. Kiai or nyai are the supreme teachers, and mostly they are also the owners and the leaders of pesantren. Kiai or nyai are also recognized as religious leaders in the community. In pesantren, in daily life, kiai or nyai are assisted by ustad ustadah to teach santri. And the second pillar, so this is the pillars of the pesantren. The second pillar is santri. As I mentioned before, santri are the pesantren student. There are 2 kinds of santri: santri mukim, those who live in the pesantren, and santri kalong that back and forth from their home to pesantren. And the third pillar is dormitory. All santri mukim live in dormitory, and some pesantren also provide dormitory for teachers. So pesantren live in dormitory 24 hours a day, and also their activity. Most pesantren have their activity like 18 hours a day. And the fourth pillar are mosque, or if the pesantren doesn't have mosque, so they use prayer hall to worship. And the 5th pillar is teaching of Kitab Kuning. Kitab Kuning is the classical Islamic text. The main characteristic of pesantren, which distinguishes pesantren from other Islamic educational institution, is the teaching of Kitab Kuning. Kitab Kuning are taught through bandongan. Bandongan is like deliver a speech, like monologue, and also sorogan method. Sorogan method means active learning, that students read Kitab Kuning in front of the teachers, and the teachers give correction or maybe give response to the students. And next slide, please. The challenges that faced by pesantren now is radicalization. And some pesantren, not all, and also the number, very, very few, are exposed to violent extremism. But in a pity that the very few, that's a very few number of pesantren that exposed to extremism, even terrorism, that published, what is it? So like published in the media, and so now like some people see pesantren as a producer of terrorism. So this is also a challenge for us. And santri at the junior and secondary school levels are vulnerable to tempted by radicalization. So that's like in other school, I think, yeah. So what are the strategies to prevent radicalization in pesantren based on my experience, yeah, because as a teacher and also the leader of the pesantren. Please, next slide. Yeah. So yes, the first strategy, I think, to contextualize Kitab Kuning, and also this is also I have been done, yeah, since these years. I mean, from like 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago, to contextualize Kitab Kuning. For example, in Kitab Kuning, there are mentioned like there are privileged and there are first citizens and second citizens. So like there are categorization and classification of the citizens in the country. So there are mentioned that first citizen, those are Muslim, and then second citizens that are non-Muslim. And for Muslim, as the first citizen, they have privilege, and the second citizen, they don't have some rights that been that belong to the Muslim. So this is so nowadays we contextualize the teaching in the Kitab Kuning, like the concept of the classification of citizenship. So we say that there are no in the scriptures, there are no classifications of the citizenship. Yeah, as the God mentioned in the one of the verse in the Al-Quran, blah, blah, blah. So like this, this is the example of the contextualization of Kitab Kuning. And the second strategy is to encourage students participating in interfaith events, such as youth camp. So that's our students, our santri. Also, we encourage them to participate in youth camp. That in the youth camp, interfaith youth camp. So there are students, young students from different religious background. And that's successful. I mean, the youth camp usually some organization conduct the youth camp, and our santri also participate in that youth camp. And after the youth camp, like it's I give, what is it, like opening the mind of the santri. And also we encourage them to participate in intra or interfaith dialogue. We will show the picture later on. And the third strategy, that's to develop interreligious holy places visit program. This is my terminology. I mean, we take our santri to the church, for example, or to the Hindu temple, or to the Buddhist temple, so they can learn, and they know the worship places for the Christian, also the Buddhist, also the Hindu. And so, and I've been done it like many times with the students. And also the fourth strategy is to invite intra or interreligious scholars and all students to live in pesantren. There were some seminary students who live in my pesantren, the Catholic students who live in pesantren for 2 weeks at a time. And also there was master student who also lived in my pesantren. And this is also, and every day they lived with our santri. So every day they made conversation, and it give what is it, like the friendship, and also to take out the prejudice. And the fifth strategy, to publish intra or interfaith activities which are conducted by pesantren or participated by santri, and all teachers or kiai or nyai in the media, including social media, because maybe we do the intra or interfaith dialogue, but please don't publish. But in our pesantren, we invite the journalists to publish, and also we publish ourselves through our social media what we have done with the intra or interfaith activities. So those are the strategies that we have been done. And the last slide, please. Yes, this is the three pictures. The first one, the picture is on the right, the right in the up in the above. That's my pesantren is involved in the discussion about Shia and nationalism in Indonesia. So that's we discussed about the book that's entitled Shia and nationalism in Indonesia. So we collaborated with the Shi'i pesantren at that time. We know that Sunni and Shi'i, there have been tension between Sunni and Shi'i around the world, including in Indonesia. So we try to show to the people, to the community, that there is no big difference, and also there is, so we have to not the big difference, but there is what is it, we would like to show to the community that we have to live together with the Shi'i. So Sunni and Shi'i in Indonesia, we are what is it, we should develop dialogue, and we should develop understanding each other. Yeah. And the two pictures is just last year. Yeah. Two pictures last year that in my pesantren, those are the Catholic priest. Yeah. Christian priest. A Christian priest from Mennonite, from different countries, and they came to my pesantren, and we had dialogue with them, and also our students were enthusiastic to be involved in dialogue, and also to ask questions, etc. And so this we hope through this dialogue, Christian and Muslim dialogue. So we hope that it will develop mutual understanding between Christian and Muslim community. So I think this is the end of the presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, Bu Nyai Hindun and Ina. So we may highlight the issue of communications and text understanding that's actually play some of the role to prevent or even trigger to violence and extremism. That's actually the end of the second panel, and we will move to the third panel, at which actually we will elaborate more on the hermeneutics or contextual hermeneutics, in which how should we think and understand the text or even religious teaching in order to prevent the extremism and radicalism in school. So let's move on to the third panel. We have Professor Peter. Excuse me. Let me. Sorry if I always misspell the name. Okay, Professor Peter Ben Smith from Vrije University of Amsterdam, and Professor Amin Abdullah from School of Graduate Studies Sunan Kalijaga, but he is also now the advisory board of BPIP. How to say it in English? It is the national body of ideology. How you translate it into English? Sorry, BPIP, Badan Pembinaan Ideologi Pancasila. So it's national body of the. Sorry, anybody can help me to translate it into English? Or the translator of the okay. That's national body for Pancasila. It is, sorry to missay it. But now let me invite Professor Peter Ben Smith for the next 40 minutes, and Professor Peter Ben Smith and Professor Amin Abdullah for the next 40 minutes. And for any of you who have any questions, please, you can write the questions in the chat room in English. So then our friend Ahmad will collect it. And then I will read your questions, and please, you can direct to any speakers. And if you'd like to write it in Indonesia, in Bahasa Indonesia, please write it in Bahasa Indonesia. We will read it and translate it into English for you. Please, Professor Peter Ben Smith, time is yours.
Thank you very much for this kind introduction. I hope you can all hear me and also see the screen that I've shared. If not, please give some indication that you cannot.
We can see it and we can hear you well, please.
Perfect. Wonderful. I understand my task as reflecting on a slightly more abstract level on the question of contextuality and interpretation in the broader context of preventing radicalization and the like. I do have experience in the field of education, of course, but after the wonderful case study that we've just listened to, I think I will reflect on this question at a slightly more abstract level. I do so coming from the Faculty of Theology and Religion of Vrije Universiteit Amsterdam, where I'm involved in the Center for Contextual Biblical Interpretation. And as the name of the center indicates, we are involved in doing research and in working on contextuality and reflect and seeing how that works out. I will try to limit myself to about 10 to 15 minutes and lay out some of the basic convictions of our work. And with that, my first observation would be that contextuality is a gift and a challenge. And beyond that, contextuality is a fact. Nobody has a context, which is of course a bit of a truism. Yet the awareness of having a context is still something that needs to be reflected on and is not always reflected on, as I think many forms of radicalism have to do with a lack of reflection on where you're coming from, what your perspective is, what influences your perspective and the like. Yet not only radicals, but also moderate or liberal or academic scholars have a perspective that needs reflecting on, and even I would submit in some cases one can learn from more radical interpretations, but that will come later. Why do I call contextuality a gift? Well, that's a fairly basic hermeneutical observation. You need a point of view in order to develop a perspective, as this picture also shows. Without a position, without being in a position, you cannot develop a perspective, and without a perspective, you cannot see anything. So in that sense, being grounded in a particular context is essential for any hermeneutical venture. On the other hand, of course, there is a challenge. One cannot see everything, as this picture also illustrates. As, beyond the picture frame, there's quite a bit of landscape that's not covered by the picture. But in order to be to see something at all, you need to look in a particular direction, which then also means that you do not look in other directions, or when you're looking from a particular perspective, you're not looking from other perspectives. Nonetheless, the perspective that you develop can be very helpful and fruitful. So in that sense, I think that contextuality is a gift and a challenge, and also a fact. A second dimension that I'd like to highlight is positions of reading that play an important role in contextual biblical interpretation and contextual interpretation of anything, I think. One way of dealing with contextuality is simply to ignore it. And that's something I call reading without. So you're not taking into account your audience, or you regard people primarily, in fact, as your audience whom you are sending a message to, but you're not particularly interested in their voice. Another way of dealing with context is to read for, which, well, one way of illustrating is that I write a biblical commentary for a particular group of people whom I think should listen to my voice or should take into account what I'm saying, but I'm not, again, not necessarily listening to them, yet I'm taking them into account to the extent that I reflect a bit on what sort of audience they are. And that goes beyond reading without, which is simply writing scholarship in a vacuum. Then the third option is to read with. That means immersing yourself in a particular community of learners, for a community of readers rather, and to listen to their voice, to read with them, and to develop your own perspective in conversation with the people whom you're writing for in the end. I think personally that the third option is the most fruitful, reading with, but it also comes with a confrontation with your own positionality, because as soon as you engage in reading with others, you're also compelled to reflect on why you are reading, or why I am reading the way I'm reading. And that the illustration of a session of psychotherapy illustrates this a bit. That can be fairly time consuming, as who is really fully aware of what motivates him or her. Even if I say, well, I'm reading as a, I don't know, white, heterosexual, cisgender, Western male with a very high education, it sounds like I've said a lot about myself, but you still don't know many things about me, such as, I don't know, the way in which I was raised, which may leave a strong imprint on my approach to texts. So there's reading with and taking into account your own contextuality is really a matter of serious attention and quite an investment when you want to take it seriously. When it then comes to the question as to why, what does contextual biblical interpretation lead to? What are its gains? I think quite a few observations can be made, some of which also relate to the question of contextual interpretation and radicalization. The first thing that I would like to highlight is what I call with, for instance, Eastern Orthodox theologian John Zizioulas, an ethos of otherness. When I take seriously that I myself have a certain kind of position, and when I want others to take my voice seriously, as I usually like it to be the case, then I also need to acknowledge that others have a position and that I need to listen to their voice, so that there's certain reciprocity involved there. Taking this one step further, so that this means allowing for room for other interpretations and for others interpreting the same kind of texts that I'm interpreting. This also means that that reading becomes a communal activity, never an individual activity. Of course, I'm involved as a person, as myself, but being aware of the fact that my own perspective is my perspective on the one hand, and also only my perspective, just my perspective, means that I have a need for the other to complement my point of view or to challenge it even. And in an ideal world, I think that is a reconciling activity. So engaging with the same texts or with similar texts can also bring people together, precisely because they have a need for each other, as their perspectives can complement, can add to each other. That's a fairly basic hermeneutical insight, but I do think it has fairly strong ethical implications as well. One of these ethical implications is that this view of reading also includes boundaries. For instance, it excludes readings that exclude other voices. So if I, as a matter of principle, simply exclude the readings of others for reasons that have nothing to do with content, for instance, I exclude readings by women because I don't think that women should be interpreters of the Bible, or I exclude, I don't know, Indonesian readings because I don't think that the Indonesians are valid scholars, or anything along those lines. But that's impossible in this kind of from this kind of hermeneutical perspective. And I think that also speaks to radicalism, in the sense that many radicals often do want their own voice to be heard, but systematically exclude the voice of others. And in doing so, they absolutize their own hermeneutical perspective, which is a fallacy, as it's impossible, given the fact that each perspective is also just a perspective. It's a perspective, certainly, and to be valued. There's also one among multiple perspectives. If you're operating in a more radical or fundamentalist manner, you're confusing your own perspective with the truth, and that's never viable. So when it comes to honest interpretation and serious hermeneutically reflected interpretation, such positions do not have any place. They're excluded. Then, as a third point, an important requirement is the willingness to listen. There is a logical connection in that sense between academia and society, as of course in the academic community there are many perspectives, but on the other hand, even more perspectives can be gained, can be brought into the conversation when an interpretation is also challenged by ordinary voices from the whole of society. So I think that this willingness to listen is very important. That also implies to interreligious and intercultural conversations. And again, this is a challenge, I think, to forms of radicalism that are not particularly interested in listening, but primarily in shouting. Finally, I would say that listening to these other voices can be immensely enriching, even if it comes, or precisely because it has to do with relativizing one's absolute view. And we all have pre-understandings of texts that can be challenged fruitfully and lead to a richer interpretation. I'd like to conclude with a brief example of that. The picture you see here is that of what's called in Christian tradition the visitation. It's the Virgin Mary who visits her, traditionally niece, Elizabeth. Both women are pregnant, and it is in this context that Mary sings the Song of Mary, and also the text of the traditional Ave Maria comes about. But what intrigues me about it is an experience I had 3 years ago, with a female student from Brazil, who was also a physiotherapist and who had worked with pregnant teenagers. And I must admit that pregnant teenagers are not my particular field of expertise. Yet what she contributed to the conversation was a profound reflection on the physical dimension of what it means to be pregnant when you're about 14, 15 years old, which is the appropriate, the age at which Mary probably was pregnant and gave birth to Jesus. Bringing in this context of healthcare and pregnancy among teenagers in a less well-developed setting of Sao Paulo helped me to understand, or really added a perspective to this text that I think is historically appropriate, and also deepens the impact of the text is not just a text about one girl who happens to be pregnant visiting a relative who's also pregnant, but it also takes into account the physical implications of this all and really adds to the depth of one's view of the text. That's just one example. Other examples can easily be added, but this is what I would like to conclude with, hoping to having shown how contextuality also as a thing, as a matter of principle, is something that invites openness to other voices on the one hand, and also is very problematic when it comes to absolute perspectives, such as radicalized perspectives. I hope this is more or less what you wanted me to do. And with this, I also conclude. Thank you for your kind attention.
You're very welcome, Professor Peter Ben Smith. Thank you so much. And then, yeah, we move to Professor Amin Abdullah. You have around 15 to 20 minutes to elaborate some issues on the contextual hermeneutics. Time is yours, please, Professor Amin Abdullah. Monggo unmute, Prof. Prof Amin belum unmute. Bener. Prof Amin belum unmute, Prof Amin.
Dari situ mungkin ya, dari host.
Oke, ampun Prof. Ampun.
Gitu. Okay. Yes. Thank you very much, Dr. Rafiq, as moderator. And of course, I would like to thank to the working group from Netherlands and also from Indonesia. This topic is very, very important today about contextual hermeneutic, and especially for the Muslim world, because by using contextual hermeneutic, we are going to have an Islamic religious pedagogical reform, especially to engage in multi-faith society. Okay, I will talk for 4 points actually. What is contextual hermeneutics? But previous speakers, and that's a good introductory. So I will not speak long on this issue, contextual hermeneutic. And then what does the Quran or scriptural ethics next? Scriptural ethics say in facing multi-faith society. And the most important one is what went wrong actually. And then the final, it is my proposal, contextual hermeneutics through multi, interdiscipline and transdisciplinary approach. So as has been mentioned today, that contextual hermeneutic actually when we interpret a text, sacred texts and other texts like Kitab Kuning, we have to pay attention on the cultural, social, political, even scientific setting. So social and cultural environmental influences is very, very important in deciding the meaning. So as our friend said about Tawhid, Khilafah, or those jihad and other things, we need this dimension, cultural, social, and political. So the interpretations of text is not literally, but hermeneutically. Next. So that's the problem today in digital era. we are facing with the difficult situations in which these difficult situations is the challenge for the education. What does that challenge? The first is a call for religious fanatism, da'watu ta'assub, or if you like, you can say education for ta'assub, education for fanatism. Yeah, we are religious, but our religiosity is minus dialogical competencies. And it is very, very difficult in the situations of religion and citizenship everywhere in all Muslim world. So what we need is the reform on Islamic religious pedagogy in multi-faith society. Next. This is the very difficult problem actually, as my colleague said about mutakalimun, about Muslim theologians and fuqaha, because they are satisfied with the way of thinking tamyiz, mean a type of way of thinking that emphasize the importance of difference. But unfortunately, they do not like to see more deeply about the convergence, but they like only divergence. So this is very, very difficult issue in Islamic theology. Okay, next. But if we come back to the scriptural ethics from the Quran, Quran in Hujurat, for example, next. So I said it is scriptural ethics that give us ethical position to face the others. The first is don't ridicule, laugh, or mock the others. It is the first. The second one, avoid the negative assumption to them, to the Christianity, to Buddhism, to Catholic, or even Jewish and others. Don't find fault. Next, don't find faults with other religious followers. Okay. Next. And don't speak ill of other religious followers. So actually, this Hujurat, if we can understand well, so this is a very, very hermeneutic type of reading text. So next, there is no superiority one sex over another and nation over another, and even religions, I think. Next, so in plural society is to get to know one another, make friends. It is more important. Next. So the next. Now, this is the condition for salvation according to Quran. But unfortunately, ulama and also mufassirun, they have their own interpretation because of the situations in the Middle Ages. But if we come back to the Quran, actually it is far from their interpretation, because you see the conditions of salvation is only three. The first is a belief in the God, whatever the God you have, believe in the last day, yaumil akhir, and also wa'amila solihan, righteous deeds. Only that ones, only that three items is very important. Next. So do good deeds and act justly toward all believers of the word religions. This is the most important one. If we come back to the Quran, but not to the interpretations of the ulama in the Middle Ages, like Ibn Taymiyyah and others. We have to see the context today is very, very different from the Middle Ages. Next. So what's actually Quran say about the multi-religious diversity? yeah, we have to understand the situations and then respect the reality. Engage with the reality means we have to be tolerance, not radical, not extreme, and so forth. Manage into the strengths. Yeah, there are many conflict, but please manage it and change into strength. Means conflict resolution. The teacher should be a teachers of conflict resolution too, and then finally collaborate between amongst religious adherents. Okay, then next. But what went wrong? This is our topic, very important to be discussed today. What went wrong? Yes, as my the previous speakers underlined, that there is a gap between Dazain and Dasain, between al-thawabit al-mutaghayyirat. Al-thawabits mean Dasalun, and al-mutaghayyirats mean Dasain, changeable because of science, because of cultural interactions, because of social engagements. So what we need is a scientific interlocutors. What we need in religious teachings is scientific interlocutor. Next. First, of course, we have to underline al-karamah al-insaniyah, using humanities, contemporary humanities, that underline the importance of openness and empathetic approach. This is very important. Not a conflictual approach, but empathetic approach. The people, the students, and also the teachers should underline the comprehensions of ideas, intentions, or feeling of the people through the empirical manifestations of culture. Yes, we are living in difficult situations, so please, difficult situation, but please understand it, respect it. Okay. Because everyone experience life as meaningful. Christians experience life meaningful. Islam, Muslim experience life meaningful. Jewish also. And they express this meaning in discernible pattern. This is scientific and can be analyzed and understood. This is the first. The second one, the trouble, as I know, as I see, there is a trouble. Next. The trouble because in teaching religions, we use monodisciplinary approach. It is unfortunate. And monodisciplinary approach in Islamic religious pedagogy contributes sacralizations of the understanding of the text. Fiqh, kalam, qanun, and so as long as I understand, monodisciplinary approach prone to produce emotional attitudes that treat a text as a sacred, but with a narrow understanding. Next. So how do we move to solution? How to move to contextual hermeneutic? So this is my suggestions. So please use this type of approach, multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, and transdisciplinary approach in religious Islamic pedagogy. Next. Because of the time, I will not. You can read this PowerPoint because this PowerPoint will with you. Okay. Next. But for what? Multi, inter, and transdisciplinary. This is another another term for hermeneutics. Everyone, Muslim scholars today are longing to have a multi and transdisciplinary approach using theology, pedagogy, sociology, anthropology, and psychology even. This is very important. So it is not enough to have kalam and fiqh, especially in the old type of understanding. Next. So this is what we are working now in Indonesia. Contextual hermeneutic through multi-inter and transdisciplinary approach. What for? Yeah, to enhance the fresh ijtihad that enables cross-cultural religious literacy in multiple society. So there are three competency: personal competency, know your own religions; comparative competency, know the other religions; and then after that, collaborative competency, know how to collaborate. So this is the competencies in cross-cultural religious literacy. Next. So this is the challenge of educational, religious education today, how to combine between subjective, objective, and intersubjective type of understanding. Subjective, please understand your own religions holistically, comprehensively. Objective means you have to see world religions, race, ethnicity, and so forth. But intersubjective, that is the most important one, means innermost voice of the heart is very, very important. Qalbun salim in the Quran, respect and engagement. Next. So this is, we should explore together contextual hermeneutic through cross-cultural religious literacy is very, very imperative, especially like Indonesia, like United States, which is a very, very multicultural society. Maybe of course in Netherlands, because you have many migrants. Okay, so respect, engage, the reality of religious diversity is must. Okay, so we have terminology in Arabic, takamulul ulum wastiwajul ma'arif, the semi-permeability across the boundary of Islamic theology, social sciences, and humanities. And that's what I mean contextual hermeneutic. And nihayatu takhasus, the end of over-specialization, over-specialized education in Islamic knowledge. Next, this is the last of my PowerPoint. How can we put this into practice? A case study in Indonesia. I work with one faith-based NGO that have been developing this into international program in cross-cultural literacy for madrasah and teacher school and religious educators. We have trained more than 4,000 during 2 years from 31 provinces. We introduced to that teachers about Islam, Islamic religions, Christian, Jewish, and then how to make collaboration between diverse adherents of religious people. Next. So if you want to follow, next, to follow the podcast, so Pak Alwi Shihab and me have a podcast, and you can trace that and of course give a comment for that. Thank you, Pak Rafiq.
Thank you so much, Prof. Amin Abdullah, and of course the podcast in Indonesia. So yeah, in Indonesia, right? I mean in Bahasa Indonesia.
In Indonesia.
Yeah, but yeah, for those in the Netherlands, you can also learn Indonesia through the podcasts actually. Okay, thank you so much, Prof. Amin Abdullah and Professor Peter Ben Smith. So now that's the end of the third session, and we will move on to the last panel. Yeah, the last panel is so from the text and the hermeneutic of the text, we move on to the state policies. So then we have Professor Adin Sila from Indonesia. He's now the special staff of the, he's a director, right, in the Ministry of Education, and Dr. Eric Renkema from Netherlands. under the title of Visiting Educational System in Indonesia in the Netherlands. Before I give the floor to Professor Adlin Sila first, and let me remind all the participants, please, if you have any question, you can raise the question by writing on the chat box, and you can write it in English or in Bahasa. Jadi kalau mau nulis dalam bahasa Indonesia, monggo silakan tuliskan dalam bahasa Indonesia. We will collect the questions and then we will read it for the speakers. It's better if you say whom the speaker you'd like to answer your questions. If no, we will give the opportunity for the speakers to respond to your questions, please. Okay, now let me invite Professor Adlin Sila. Time is yours. We have around 40 minutes for both of you. It might be around 15 to 20 for each one. Please, Professor Adlin Sila.
Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Peace be upon you all. Thank you, Mr. Chair Ahmad Rafiq, for having me in this conference and this panel. So I'd like to extend my honor. I'm very humble to the working group, Tolerance Inclusive Religious Educations, or Kelompok Kerja, POKJA, of the Netherlands Indonesia Consortium for Muslim Christian Relations that organized this web conference on Zoom. So I'm asked to address the conference with a presentation on the theme of the educational system in Indonesia. So I am given a time for the maximum 12 minutes. Hopefully I can do it. So thank you for the Alper Alasak, the coordinator for the Netherlands, and Dr. Atik Tapipin, the coordinator for Indonesia. So if you could allow me, Mr. Chair, I can share my slides.
Is the technician, Pak Arifai?
Yep.
Okay.
Can you see the slide now? Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, it's clear, Prof. Sila.
Okay. Okay. In the Ministry of Education, Culture, Research, and Technology, we have a very popular tagline called Merdeka Belajar. So what we are aiming for from this policy is we are creating an independent education system in Indonesia. So I would like to explain what's called Merdeka Belajar. Yeah, this is the picture that is found anywhere in schools across the Indonesia. So what Merdeka Belajar really means. So I quote the statement from the Minister Nadiem Makarim, being independent in the learning process. That is Merdeka Belajar stand for. So from this policy, we will give more freedom and autonomy for the educational institution in order to be independent from bureaucracy. The teachers and lecturers are freed from difficult bureaucracy, and students are given more space to choose the subject that they like most. So the primary aims of Merdeka Belajar are to allow the students, first, the freedom to think and the freedom to express themselves. So this will help the students discover their interests and talents, enabling them to determine their future careers. Working in a job that suits your interests is one of the most valuable life opportunities. And I want all students in Indonesia to experience that. Mr. Nadiem said again.
So the emphasis of the students' personality and characteristics as the basis for giving marks. So the chance, this is the first policy that Mr. Nadim conducted in the first years of his office, the chance in the national examination format by instructing school teachers to transform the boring questions answer method with a much more personal project like making a portfolio, writing a paper, or even a group assessment. So we call it before Ujian Nasional or UN. So we replace that. Yeah. So what you are aiming from this chance is through this system, the students are taking a new method called the national assessment or assessment national, consisting of 3 parts. The first, minimum competency assessment or AKM, character survey, and learning environment survey. So the AKM was designed to measure students' achievement from cognitive learning outcomes, namely literacy and numeracy. So we call it scholastic method. Focusing on penalaran or critical thinking. With the new method based on literacy and numeracy, students can apply their literacy and numeracy skills to solve almost any problem in any subject they are facing. Okay. So the simplification of the teacher's teaching plan into one single page only. So rancangan pelajaran for one semester, like a planning for curriculum for one semester, is simplified for only one single page. Then the loosening up the zonation method, metode zonasi. So the aims are to let the students have more fun, enjoy the learning process, to be able to socialize with their friends, and to have an overall better learning environment to be the best version of themselves. And innovation in managing the student programs was demanded to improve the students' global competencies through various latest courses. So before, we call, there are some groups of favorite schools. And even though these schools are state-funded schools, but mostly these popular schools are only given to the rich students, or the advantaged students. So while the students living around the schools have no access to the schools. So we change this by the so-called zonation method. So only those who live near the school that can have access to the school. And this is actually the nature of what we call sekolah negeri or state-owned schools. So 3 groups targeted in Merdeka School, Merdeka Belajar. First, the students. We are aiming that the students have more independence in studying. The second, the teachers. So we are given more independency and autonomy for the teachers to create their own curriculum based on the students' needs. And the third is for the university students. We call it Campus Merdeka. So we will give also independency and also autonomy for the university students to study the subject that they are interested. Except their major study. So another aspect in giving more freedom to the schools is digitalization. Digitalization. So digitalization has transformed the learning process, and we have proved this. So the use of digital technology can speed up learning innovations. So since the inauguration of the minister, Mr. Nadiem Makarim, in 2019, he has established what we call digital platforms, platform Merdeka Belajar for the students, and platform Merdeka Mengajar for the teachers. So the teachers can learn from other teachers about innovation in the teaching method, and also the stories how to create the talents of the students. And this becomes the inspirations for others teachers how to conduct their schools. So digital platforms have provided unlimited access to the students and teachers across the provinces of Indonesia, regardless of religious and ethnic background. And the digital platforms have also provided the university authority with more opportunities for developing internship and also immersion programs by collaborating with professionals, graduates, practitioners, and the university's strategic partners worldwide. So in the past, there are more something like and dislike policy when the schools will elect the teachers can go to Jakarta, the capital city, to attend what we call it sometimes upskilling and reskilling in the teaching method. And through this platform, the case is not the case anymore. Yeah, it's no longer the case. So independent campus or campus Merdeka. So this program will give the students the opportunity to experience learning outside their original campus through 8 programs, namely, first, domestic or international student exchanges. Second, an internship program for up to 2 semesters. So in the past, the students have to have a leave, formal leave from their university in order to attend internship, in one company or more. Through this program, this is legal. So the university should provide this internship program, and this is counted, for SKS, up to 40 SKS or credit. And the teacher, the lecturer should become a supervisor for this program. Thirdly, teaching in remote areas, or we call it 3T, isolated villages, terdepan, terluar, terlupakan, not terlupakan, terdepan, terluar, and so forth. And the fourth one is research projects. So while they are studying in the university, the student can create their own research projects, and this will help them accustomed with research methodology and how to conduct and contribute to their discipline based on their funding or research findings. And the fifth is helping the development of the countrysides. So they don't have to wait until the end of the study to do this program. While they are studying, they can help the development of the countryside. And independent studies, and entrepreneurship program. So they can, while they are studying, they can create a startup, and they can also develop their entrepreneurship skill. So if they graduated and they cannot find a good job for them, so they can create their own job. And the last one is humanities projects. So some students choose not to become an intellectual, like Mas Ahmad Rafiq and Prof. Amin Abdullah and others who are speaking right now. Some students are interested in doing programs related to humanity. So we can facilitate this from university. So another one, Mr. Nadim also urged practitioners from any industry with no formal teaching certificate, or they can still hold their job in that industry, but they can also spend sometimes in the university, so they can apply what we call it praktisi mengajar. So through this program, they can share their knowledge and their experience to the students, and this will become an inspiration for the students, particularly those who wanna become an entrepreneur after they graduated. So this is the summary of those programs in the university. So now there have been about 90,000 university students participating in this campus mengajar or teaching program in the countryside. So they teach over 20,000 primary and secondary schools in remote areas or in 3T. Yeah. So the upcoming campus programs since its inception in 2020 will involve about 21.45 university students who will teach at 5,093 schools nationwide. Yeah. Okay, this is the episode that we have launched from the first episode, the chance of national assessment. Now we have launched the 24th episode, the transition from kindergarten to the primary school. We provide a more enjoyable atmosphere for the students by replacing the obligation for the students before entering the primary school, that they have to be able to write, they have to be able to read, yeah, and they have to be able to count. We call it calisto. So there is no obligation anymore for the students to master these 3 skills before entering the primary schools. So this is the platform that I have been describing. So everyone can have access to this platform. So just have a go to see, yeah, at glance from the first episode up to the 24th episode. Okay. So how to go back to the first one? Okay. Okay, the key role of the teachers. So we are focusing on the upgrading the skill of the teachers. So upskilling and reskilling. So because the teachers still play a key role in the Merdeka Belajar. So digital technology cannot replace the role of the teachers, because we ask the teachers to close emotionally to their students in order to identify the talents and the potentials of their students. So basing on this, the teachers should create their own curriculum, basing on the students' needs. So, but to have a high quality learning, technology should be there to augment the teaching process. So digitalization through these platforms makes the learning process easier and more efficient, especially for the students learning from home, especially during the pandemic, and those live in remote areas. Okay. Now we are moving to to the main theme of this conference, tackling violence in school. Yeah. So we are promoting the so-called tiga dosa besar, yeah, or great sins, yeah, namely intolerance, sexual violence, and harassment or bullying. So we are aiming to free our schools from these three misdeeds. Yeah. So protective laws and policies are fundamental for protecting children from violence. So still on progress, we call this, we are still drafting this bill. We call it Peraturan Menteri Pencegahan dan Penanganan Kekerasan di Satuan Pendidikan. So we are now conducting a public hearing, uji publik. What you call it in English, Mr. Ahmad Rafiq? Uji publik.
Public hearing.
Yeah, public hearing. Now the draft are sent to the head of the Muhammadiyah and NU. Yeah, Prof. Abdul Mukti are now working on giving feedback to this draft. If they are finished with this, we will announce publicly these laws and policies. So through these policies, we are encouraging students to take responsibility for their part in maintaining safe school environments, including students participating in safety planning. So if one students conduct this kind of misdeeds, so all the students in the class should be responsible. Yeah. So ignorance is not acceptable in this case. So we are encouraging the students, all the students, to take this responsibility, okay, and request that students report potential problems to school officials. So through these laws and policies, we are creating a task force or satgas for giving something like safety environment, and also how to secure the victims, and also how to secure the witness. Yeah, because sometimes the victims shut up, yeah, or they are shut up by the schools because they will, if they voice up this case, the school will be in trouble. Yeah. So the aims of these laws is to provide or to let the schools become safe places for students to study. Yeah. Students, teachers, staff, and parents all have an important role in promoting school safety and reassuring students that schools are generally very safe places to study. So how come if the schools are not safe for them? So it's difficult for them to study. So this is the first thing, and very fundamental things to do is to provide schools or safe place as safe places for study for the students. So what you are now working on is the school must create, yeah, supportive school climate, like school-wide behavioral expectations, caring school programs, yeah, positive interventions and supports, and psychological and counseling services. Because many victims just keep their mouth closed, and they are afraid of being victims or double victims, or they are sometimes blamed by the environment because they report their case to the school. So you'll provide this task force that can provide psychological and counseling services. So this is probably the last slides from my presentation. So these policies, Merdeka Belajar, have been promoted and presented by Mr. Nadiem Makarim just recently in London in the conference called the World Education Forum. So all the ministers of education all of the world attend this conference. And Mr. Nadiem Makarim received very appreciation and standing ovation for his interesting presentation at that time. So we can go through this YouTube and maybe if I have still time. Yeah.
It's very limited. We'll have only 15 minutes.
So this is a animation that we. Sorry, there's a commercial break first. Yeah. This is the short film that we provide for all the schools.
Terkadang kita lakukan secara tidak sadar loh. Karena itu, kita perlu memahami apa arti dari intoleransi.
Yep.
Intoleransi adalah sikap atau tindakan.
So we create all kinds of media to promote that schools must be free from sexual harassment, from violence, from bullying. So animation is probably one of the good methods, yeah, in attracting the attention from the students.
Bukan hanya etnis, Indonesia juga beragam agamanya, sukunya, golongan keagamaannya, dan juga beragam kepercayaannya. Apakah yang dimaksud dengan istilah kepercayaan?
Okay, I stop this.
Pemerintah untuk merujuk kepada sekitar 190 kepercayaan lokal yang dianut oleh lebih dari 10 juta masyarakat Indonesia yang tersebar di Nusantara. Miris dan sedih rasanya.
Okay, the essence of Merdeka Belajar is to unlock the full potential of teachers and students to innovate and improve their learning quality independently. So autonomy in teaching means not just following bureaucracy, but also carrying out innovations. So thank you. I leave it there. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi. Thank you so much, Professor Adlin. Yes, in Indonesia we have the freedom in education. So Merdeka Belajar. So it's not only about preventing religious violence, but also violence in general in the schools. Thank you so much. And let's, Professor Adlin Sila, he's a director in the Ministry of Education, Culture, Research and Technology, Republic of Indonesia.
Sorry, I'm a special staff.
Oh, special staff. Sorry,
yes.
He's a special staff of the Minister.
Expert staff.
Expert staff of Minister of Religious Education in Indonesia. And now let's move on to the last presentations, but the last but not least, we have Dr. Eric Renkama. He is an educational theologian and working as an identity consultant for VERUS. There's the Association for Catholic and Christian Education in Netherlands. Previously, he was associate lecturer in Worldview Education and Diversity and lecturer in Worldview Education at the Primary Education Teacher Training Institute at Windesheim, Uzwala University of Applied Sciences. Dr. Eric Renkama. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Time is yours, please. Dr. Renkama, please.
Thank you very much.
Okay, yes. Please.
Good morning from the Netherlands.
Good.
And good afternoon for all your dear colleagues in Indonesia. Thank you for the opportunity to present some educational insights from the Netherlands and the role of religion and worldview in the Netherlands. I will share my presentation with you, and I hope you can see a beautiful illustration on screen. The Netherlands has a special educational system. As in many countries, children of different ages can attend public schools and schools based on a specific worldview or religion. We call them denominational education. The Netherlands is unique in this because both types are financed equally by the government. And this is a government that does not favor a worldview position in public affairs. At the moment, almost every school in the Netherlands is either a school for denominational education or a public school. This dual education system covers all levels of education, from primary schools to universities. First, the public school. This public school is neutral in matters of worldview and religion. It cannot base its education on a single ideological tradition. The public school approaches the worldview visions of students, teachers, and society in a so-called active pluriform manner. This is apparent, for example, in the open admission policy for students and the open appointment policy for staff, regardless of their cultural, ethnic, or worldview background. A school for denominational education, the second type, bases its education on a specific worldview tradition. About 2/3 of all schools in the Netherlands are denominational educational schools, mostly Catholic or Protestant Christian. There is, among others, also a number of Islamic, Hindu, and Jewish schools. In both most public schools and most denominational schools, the student population is plural from a worldview point of view. This means that, for example, Islamic students visit a Christian school and are much welcome to express their beliefs. A relatively new phenomenon is the school that is a result of a merger of a public and a denominational school. We call them a cooperation school. Public and denominational education is combined. Almost all schools in the Netherlands face a number of challenges. I outlined 3 challenges concerning the role of worldview and religion. In the first place, Dutch society, and not only this one, is characterized by a polarizing climate. Opinions and ways of life seem to be increasingly divergent and increasingly opposed to each other. There seems to be less and less listening and more being posided. One's own vision is sacred, dialogue and tolerance seem like hobbies for unworldly figures. There is suspicion of that what is different, and that suspicion manifests itself in violent or non-violent protests and unfounded theories. The second challenge concerns diversity in society and at school. More and more people express themselves in worldview and religion, in gender, sexuality, culture, and ethnicity in a way that differs from that of another. Diversity is also growing within certain groups. And this development poses many schools, and certainly denominational schools, the question of how and why their education should and can take this diversity into account for the students, and certainly also in the recruitment policy of colleagues. Since 1985, all Dutch primary schools, for example, have been required to pay attention to different worldviews and religions in our multicultural society. And since 2006, also attention to sexual diversity. And schools see the growing diversity among students, colleagues, and parents not only as a problem, let me underline that, not only as a problem, but above all as an opportunity to develop strong and good education. Diversity as a chance, as a possibility. And in practice, we see wonderful examples. In 2006, with a view to these social challenges, the first 2 I mentioned, the Dutch government gave all schools the assignment for we call citizenship education. Since 2021, a tightening of the law on citizenship education has come into effect. This law, you can read it on screen, focuses on a socially involved and active student from primary school and so on. Focuses on education that values the democratic constitutional states, combats polarization, and stimulates understanding of diversity. And as you can understand, this law is strongly linked to the first two challenges I outlined. And then a third challenge, and I do not claim to be complete, but a third challenge, worldview illiteracy. Fewer and fewer people in the Netherlands are members of a religious organization and feel connected to a religious institute. Many Dutch people put together their own individual worldview into a personal, meaningful palette. With this secularization and individualization, knowledge of worldview sources, religious or otherwise, is also declining. Illiteracy. And with this decline in knowledge, worldview illiteracy, the significance attributed to these sources and traditions also declines. The task of citizenship education, as I mentioned by law before, is given even more color by several organizations and academic sources. They underline the importance of worldview citizenship education. Worldview. This is a perspective for schools that want to give substance to the citizenship assignment, as I mentioned before, based on basic democratic values of freedom, equality, and solidarity, and that want to work on the personal development of their students. An important role in this worldview citizenship education is reserved for worldview existential questions and worldview existential content in education. This worldview citizenship education is in line with the Citizenship Act, and it gives even more color by strongly focusing on the worldview and personhood education of all students, religious or secular. Worldview citizenship education has three important characteristics that focus on reducing polarization, stimulating mutual understanding in the context of diversity, and promoting worldview literacy and sense-making, the three developments I have outlined. Three characteristics of worldview citizenship education. First, with this worldview citizenship education, teachers challenge students to relate personally and critically, as well as constructively, to social processes and developments. The school, the student, and the group are at the center of the world and society. Do not forget, education is rich in content that discusses and/or contributes to the world and society. In this way, education fosters the development of understanding for other people's choices, even if they are not yours and they do not have to be. A school is a society in miniature, where tolerance and alienation, understanding and disapproval are practiced. Even if the school population seems homogeneous at first sight, all students, of course, are different. Sometimes it rubs and collides quite a bit in the school. That also means that the strange and unheard points of view are valuable. Diversity is powerful. It encourages students to practice dealing with differences, living together democratically, and in meeting in dialogue. Second, this education stimulates the personal identity development of students. This important aspect means that the educational offer invites students to reflect on and form their personal self-understanding. And my last, third characteristic of worldview citizenship education. This worldview citizenship education makes students source-wise, we call it, through a hermeneutical, communicative attention to worldview sources. My other colleagues in their presentations have mentioned this view as well, a hermeneutical, communicative attention. This stimulates the worldview literacy of young people. And we recognize these sources and their associated existential questions in religious traditions, and certainly also in secular sources of meaning, such as children's literature, films, music, games, visual arts. A choice for worldview citizenship education is therefore also an empathic and conscious choice for the valuable contribution of worldview, including religious traditions, art, and literature. They are all expressions of life questions of people from all times and directions. This means that all students can learn from different worldview traditions and other existential sources. For example, students from a Christian or a secular background learn what Islamic sources of wisdom can mean for Muslims. But worldview citizenship education that deals with identity formation of all students also invites these secular and Christian students to reflect on these Islamic sources from their own existential questions and way of living, an hermeneutical communicative view. Worldview citizenship education requires an investigative attitude towards these sources and existential questions and answers. The hermeneutical question is always central. How does this source invite students to develop their own worldview? Dutch society is in a state of flux. As a result, education faces many challenges. The professionals I meet in front of the class make the difference. They are working on it every day. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Eric Renkema. So, the respected participants and speakers, we actually coming to the ends of all 4 panels. And now it's a long panels, so we still have around 30 minutes to wrap up the conference today. So let me give you around 25 to 30 minutes for discussions. As I said in the beginning, if you have any questions, you can write your questions in the chat room, and then we will collect it to read it. So up to now, I have 2 questions from the chat room, but it is not directing to any specific speakers. So please, I hope 1 or 2 of the speakers can responded. The first questions that's in Indonesia, let me read it from Siti Mutmainnah. He is one of the school teacher in Indonesia. She said, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Maaf sebelumnya kakak, bapak, ibu, please apology and take my apology, all the speakers. I'd like to ask the question of that's my the problems that I have in my class. In my classroom, there are 2 students who are not Muslim. So it means that she is Indonesian. What can I do when I deliver the Islamic education subject in the classroom when we begin the class or commence the class with the reciting prayer, as well as finish the class by reciting the prayer with those 2 non-Muslim students? Could you help me with any solutions? And the second question is from Professor Robert Setio. Pak Robert is here. We are very happy to have him with us. The question is, how can education can transform the minds of those who exposed to an extreme ideology, methodologically speaking? Please, for the first question, I'd like to get maybe the first 1 to 4, the first 2 panels. Maybe you can share your experiences how to deal with students with the different religious background in one class while you are teaching the Islamic educations. Please, anybody, we can start from Pak Atik or Pak Atik or Bu Nyai Hindun or Ina, please.
Okay. Terima kasih Pak Rafiq. I think it's better for me to answer in bahasa Indonesia, right?
Okay.
Okay. Ibu siapa tadi Bu Hindu? Mutmainah ya. Di sekolah negeri atau sekolah swasta Bu Mutmainah itu banyak sekali tentu siswa-siswa yang berbeda agama ya. Apa namanya? Kalau pengalaman saya itu untuk pertama kali bertemu karena tidak dibenarkan kita memaksa meskipun dalam pengertian memaksa itu adalah meminta mereka untuk ikut belajar pelajaran agama Islam kepada siswa non agama Islam, maka yang pertama dilakukan adalah beri kebebasan kepada mereka apakah akan mengikuti pelajaran kita agama Islam atau berpindah ke tempat lain. Itu biasanya di sekolah kita menyediakan ada lab yang bisa ditempati, ada berbagai tempat. Hanya saja mungkin di sekolah-sekolah itu tidak ada kalau gereja ya atau puri. Nah itu yang pertama untuk menjaga keadilan lah barangkali ya gitu. Nah setelah itu tentu kita ya sebagaimana pelajaran kita. Kalau mereka ikut juga ya tidak ada masalah ya, biasanya tidak ada masalah begitu. Menurut saya itu Pak Rafiq, Bu Mutmainah, ya terima kasih.
Thank you so much. Maybe Kamel or Ina or Bu Nyai Hindun, you have any perspective for this? How can you deal with different students with a different religious background in one class? Maybe I have to give the context. In the context in Indonesia, the religious subject is compulsory for all level of educational institution, from elementary to even to higher education, right? That's compulsory. Okay. Or let's move on to the second questions, please. The second question is that from Pak Robert Setio. How could we deal with the student who already exposed to the violence methodologically? Maybe Bu Nyai Hindun, Bu Nyai Hindun or Ina, or Kamal, you can share your experience with that. Please.
I think Bu Nyai Hindun left already, Pak.
Oh, left already. Okay. Okay. I have loved the perspective from Professor Peter Binsmith and Pak Amins also, or Prof. Adlin or Dr. Renkema. Okay. Or Prof. Amin, you'd like to respond Pak Robert Setio questions or Peter?
Okay. Okay, thank you. Yeah, Pak Robert Setio's questions about how it is possible to transform the radical type of the student mind, the students that are exposed by radical and intolerance and even extremist. Okay, yeah, of course. Yeah, in Indonesia, there are many ways to approach these people. I don't know. Within the last 2 years, it seemed that there is no such radical or violence extremisms as we find 10 years ago. It is the fact actually. So there are many progress in Indonesia compared with other countries. Why the radical people reducing into that point? Yeah, because there are many ways in the societies. Civil societies, of course, has a great share on transforming this type of radical mind. And also the state, also they have their own share to stop the radical activity from those radical or hardliners group. So I think to transform it is very, very difficult actually, but collectively and collegially we can work together, collaborate together, and reduce and transform the radical mind of the student, even of the people. Of course, in the school, if it has happened in the school, the director of the schools is more responsible, as it is mentioned in the early sessions about the Rahis and others, or how the directors of the school can manage their own situation, their own problem. Yeah. Anyway, there are many approaches in Indonesia. Of course, there are still like what we have. I don't know, in Bandung or yesterday in Malang. Yeah, but the police can take them before they take real action in the society. So the collaboration between state and civil society is very, very important to transform the radical mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Amin. We'd like to hear the experience from Netherlands, whether you have such experience for the student who are already exposed to extremism. How can we deal it methodologically? Dr. Renkema or Professor Peter Ben Smith or Ina or Kamal, can you share with us, please?
Yeah, Ina already left.
Okay, Dr. Renkema, please. Okay.
Thank you very much. Yes, we recognize this situation in the Netherlands as well. Extremist thoughts, politically, sexually, worldviewly. And that is exactly the reason why the Dutch government has instated the Dutch law on citizenship education. And this implies that all schools should concern with this polarization, as I mentioned, as a development in the Dutch society. And this is also a boundary of schools. I refer to the presentation of my colleague Peter Ben Smith that diversity is also limited by extremist and discriminational voices. And that is a point of attention that I share with teachers and principals of all schools. Be focused on those limits. The Dutch government has those limits, and in our view of hermeneutical communicative religion education, we also have those limits. Just do not be limitless, but be extremely focused on those polarizing views. We recognize it and we work on it every day. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Professor Peter Smith, you'd like to add some?
Yeah, thank you. Well, as Erik Renkema just quoted me, it's difficult to add something of substance, of course. Yet, what I would underline is that, in a sense, radical perspectives want to be listened to. The condition of listening to such a perspective is, of course, also that they are willing to, the people proposing or holding radical perspectives should also be willing to listen to other perspectives. I think that's a first step, which is more at the level of the conversation. The other thing that always helps is to historically contextualize things. So radical perspectives tend to simplify things, and when, for instance, an appeal to a biblical text in my field of expertise is contextualized historically a bit, then it becomes much easier to have a conversation about it. A conversation, I think, that should confront people with other perspectives, but not necessarily be confrontational. I think as soon as as it's possible to facilitate a real conversation in the classroom, also with those holding radical perspectives, much has been gained. As conversation, I think, is the starting point and even a catalyst of transformation.
Okay, thank you so much. Prof. Adlin, we'd love to hear if it might possibly there is some state policies regarding the issues of those who are already exposed.
Yeah, I think the more the students are given opportunities to meet others, I think the better for them to widen their horizons about differences. So exposure to differences is very important for the students in order for them to be tolerant, because tolerance has two principal factors. First, you have to have intention. So don't just pop up and incidentally become a tolerant, but you have to have an intention to be tolerant for the differences. The second one is non-interference. So no questions. Tolerance is giving all the peoples, regardless of their religion, ethnicity, and so forth, a free space and equal treatment for them. So in our policy, as I said in my presentations, we oblige all directors to provide what we call rainbow class or kelas pelangi. So this class must consist of the minimum 5 to 10 different ethnic groups and religion. Yeah, in order for the students to learn about differences in one class, in one semester. And so we are working on that, and hopefully at the end, we will provide a very good environment for the students to expose themselves to differences. I think I can add in that aspect.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, we still have around 10 minutes. There is another questions in the chat rooms. So from Bu Nur Ainiyawati Barikha. So it's in Bahasa, sorry. So I have to. Assalamualaikum, Pak. Please excuse me. I'd like to ask questions about teaching religious education. For this case is Islamic education for special needs children. What is the method and the strategy to teach it for them? Is there any special program for the student for teachers of teaching children with special needs, especially to teach Islamic educations? Or let me make it a broader, religious educations. Okay. It might possibly have Atik Tapipin, because he's from the association, should answer first, and then I'll invite other speakers to respond.
Okay.
Please.
All right. Thank you, Rafiq. Well, I think the best way how to make that problem become familiar with us is, one thing is please learn the fiqh of special need of student. This is the different fiqh. I mean, how to teach the student like that, right? And then also the pedagogic and the other thing of a student of special need like that. So was it Bu? Sorry, Bu.
Bu Nur Ainiyawati.
Bu Nur, ya. So Yeah, you need to come to the association of teacher specialists like that, and then have some conversation, discussion about the thing. Yeah? I myself doesn't have any experience of that because I have a student of the normal one. That's it, Ali.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Patrick. Yes, that's actually the question for the inclusive education. So when we talk about inclusive education, it's related to the children with the special needs. And when we would like to teach them about religion, so that's the basic questions. We'd love to hear from the Netherlands experience. Is there any issues of religious education for children with special needs in the Netherlands educational system? Please, Kamel, Kamel, you'd like to give to respond? Kamel still here? Excuse me. Or Ina, you'd like to help us to respond it?
Ina left already.
Oh, Ina left. Okay, Ina left already. So yeah, I left only Professor Peter Ben Smith and Dr. Rankeman. Is there you have such issues in Netherlands?
Yeah, we also have these issues. The special attention for special educational needs. There are universities that are specialized in that theme. However, I must admit, and I experienced it a lot of times, that religious education, in what way, from what worldview, however, is not given much attention. It needs to be given more attention. So the relation between special educational needs and religious education is underlined by especially teachers, but I think we can do more efforts to underline that religious education has a special eye for those children with those needs. So I underline the essence.
Okay, yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Renkema. Padlin, I suppose the last question from Bu Nur Ainiawati is actually about the policy. Is there any special program for the teacher who is dealing with such a student with special needs, especially in teaching religion?
Yeah, thank you very much. When I was a rector at that time, from 2002 to 2010, so in that time, the discussions about the need for special need student who has a special need has a great attention from the people, and I start building like a center in the midst of the university. I don't know what does it mean, the center.
Pusat Layanan Difabel.
Yeah, the center
for Difabel Services.
Difabel Services, something like that. And this is the first in Islamic university, private or state university. It is the first. What I built that centers is the first. So suddenly the people wake up. The people outside wake up that we have to pay attention more and more about the students with the special need. So what we need actually is affirmative actions from the policy of university and also below. I mean, we have to give them a respect and care. Most so also I give special equipment for the disabled to reach out to have a ritual together with the normal one. So affirmative actions is very, very important to give a full right, a full right for those student who has special need. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. The last maybe I'd like Professor Adlin Sila, you'd like to respond. Is there any special policies from the government towards such kind of the teaching? Professor Sila, Kang Adlin, are you still there? Okay. Okay. Yeah, Bu Nur Aini, of course, we couldn't give the exact, the specific answer for the questions of the strategy and methods, but I'm so sure there is some program from the government for the students, for the teacher, to provide the teacher the ability to teach student with the children with the special needs. But the issues then is actually about the inclusive education, in which children with the special needs can go to the same school with other students and learn the same subject in the same way, of course, with the special attention and the special facilities that, in accordance with the need with the one they needed. Okay. I'm wondering, that's the end. There's no more other question. Is there any other questions? Okay, no more other questions. Okay, that's the last one. The last one is directed to Professor Peter Ben Smith. Peter, okay, let me read it from you, listener. Yes, the last one. Professor Smith, what is the strategy on is there any way to make the eyes last long times or for habits? Because sometimes, even though to the position, it is still uncomfortable and paused to read for a long time. So sorry. Or might be that's the questions about how can we can read for a long time. Is it not the specific? I'm wondering that's the question for.
Okay, that's an interesting question, but I honestly have no answer to it. I'm not a specialist when it comes to attention spans.
Yeah, I think so. That's a question about
that's widely beyond my expertise. Sorry.
Yes, thank you for the Professor Smith. That's Professor. Sorry, boy, you listen. Maybe you are asking about the habit to read for a long time. Yeah, maybe we might possibly have another sessions of the conference about how to develop our habits of reading for a long time. Maybe not in the conference there, but that's a good question. Thank you so much for our speakers and participants. We are coming to the end of the sessions, and yeah, we left only around 5 minutes. So allow me to take some notes of the conference today. Then things of might possibly the sums of the notes that we can think more later for the actions or that we. And let me share some points that oh, wait a minute. So oh, here it is. Okay. 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 Yeah, based on the discussions, of course, it is not. Sorry, disclaimer. I couldn't cover all the discussion from the beginning until the end. But let me to share some notes that we can develop our discussion later after the conference today. First, based on the discussions, it is a kind of the need for us to organizing regular meetings of informal or formal students and teachers from various religious backgrounds in the respective school environments to give students and also the teacher actually the experience of living and or learning together with the followers of different religions or worldviews, and provide students as well as teachers dialogical competencies. And the second, we need actually to provide critical thinking training to students as well as teachers also, to understand and anticipate violence and extremism that appear to students and in the school environment, such as students reading materials, learning sources, ways of getting along with ways of students getting along. Topic of discussion, especially in the issues of states and other religions, especially that's in Indonesia, and students' organizations. There's also very specific issues in Indonesia about student organization, especially religious student organization. The third, the need to create a safe space in every educational institution for students to dialogue creatively and critically, both expressing their differences with others and accepting differences. And the fourth, violence or prejudice triggered by an understanding of religious texts must be overcome by critical and open rereading of religious texts, which are understood as source of legitimacy for violence based on the basic religious values that
I lost your voice.
Signal is traffic.
Maybe you can close the conference, Atik, because it is time.
Okay. Okay.
Uphold humanity.
Oh, okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen. At the end of this international seminar, I would like to convey that all problems in schools and outside school stem from one condition, namely the existence of differences. So the sentence that is important for us to keep echoing is differences are a necessity, a gift from God. If our God wants to make all things the same, of course, it is not difficult. So let's take care of diversity. Let's take care of diversity. Okay, finally, I, as the coordinator of working group on conflict tolerance and IRE, as the organizer of this seminar, would like to thank all those who have supported this event, especially the speakers, Professor Peter Ben Smith, Professor Amin Abdullah, Professor Adli Sila, Dr. Eric Rencana, Dr. Ina Terapes, Nyai Hindun, Kemal Esaben, and also Pak Ahmad Rafiq PhD. And also for the most busy people, Alper and June. Thank you. And of course, the honorable ladies and gentlemen of the participant, both from Indonesia and from Holland. Okay, before I close, for your information, in a few months, we are going to hold a video competition for students in all around Indonesia, and if possible, from the Netherlands too. The topic is how to become a tolerant citizen all around it. Okay, everyone, that's it for me. I'll see you in the next event. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Thank you for...
Waalaikumsalam.
Thank you, see you.
Thank you. Sorry, I lost the connection in the last moment.
Prof. Amin Abdullah.
Waalaikumsalam.
See you. Selamat Rafiq. See you.
Yeah, thank you, Kang Amin.
Pak Atik, Pak Amin. See you.
Ahmed, thank you for everything you did today. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Albert. Sorry for I lost the connection at the end of the.
No problem. Atik has closed the conference.
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much. Yeah, this is almost Maghrib here in Indonesia.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye
bye. Assalamualaikum.
Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam.
Mas Rafiq sudah pergi ya? Mbak Susan?
Ya, Bu.
Sudah, Mas Rafiq sudah left?
Iya, sudah, Bu.
Oh, sayang tadi mau sebentar disuruh tinggal lupa.
Iya.
Ya sudah lah kalau gitu. Bisa ditutup saja kalau gitu nanti.
Oke,
Tadinya mau
siap.
recap sebentar gitu, tapi ya kalau dia sudah langsung live mungkin juga apa?
Iya, betul, Bu.
Mungkin udah sibuk juga, jadi kalau gitu bisa ditutup aja nanti.
Oke, siap, Bu.
Ya, terima kasih banyak ya Mbak Susan sama Mas
Sama-sama, Bu.
Slipae.
Mohon maaf atas
Memang pasti ada itu kesulitan kalau internet, tapi saya rasa semuanya oke, semuanya bagus. Ya.
Hilang timbul Bu sinyalnya.
Iya, memang begitulah internet. Alper? Hallo? Alper?
Ja,
we spreken elkaar.
ja.
Jammer, ik wilde eigenlijk nog even met Rafiq afronden, maar hij moest vlug weg. Dus nou ja, dan doen we dat maar een volgende keer misschien dat we een aparte Zoom eraan.
Lijkt me handiger.
Ja.
Ina is er ook niet bij.
Nee,
dus
daarom.
dan is er Ina ook bij.
Dus vandaar laten we
dat
gewoon
doen.
maar, dan gaan we gewoon sluiten nou.